protection, current unbalance, phase loss, and class dependent overload. But when you kind of dive into that overload a little bit more, we've actually added underload protection, a tighter trip curve for that specific submersible motor, and a feature called data calibration, which the best way to explain it is I consider a love or hate feature when it comes to the customers that use it, but it's a really good way of setting the motor in, having that turned on, and when your operator comes, because the motor's tripping for a reason, the overload's tripping for a reason, what's the first thing customers do?
Start turning stuff.
Exactly, start turning stuff up. So the auto calibration, in another sense, think of it as a tattletale. So it kind of just defeats itself. It says something doesn't work anymore, and it gives you an auto calibration fault. Usually that's a call to you. Once you understand how the feature works, it's very easy to set. But this is out of the box. Nothing else has been added to this overload, but this has been engineered for Franklin submersible motors.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when you first install that panel, how does it calibrate? When you first initially set the service factor amps on the Smart Start box?
Mm-hmm. I'll get on the next slide. Okay. The other big thing that the Smart Start panel has, and we're also going towards this way with some of the other panels, specifically the new sub monitor we're working on, is automatic voltage detection. So that's another thing for motor protection, specifically more for motor control protection, is there's no more need to be having to change the coil voltage on that contactor. Okay, and even for stocking purposes, we limit it down to maybe 4 or 5 sizes for a very, very wide amperage range because you're carrying one coil voltage. So back to your question, in terms of setting it, as soon as you set the service factor amps on the overload, there's a built-in range of about 400 to 800% that it's looking for an inrush capture. So when it looks at that inrush capture, it compares it to what the amperage has been set on the dial.
I have a question. Are you supposed to set that dial to the full load amps and not the service factor?
Service. The label, this picture's old. It's service.
Okay, so the new panels are going to be service factor?
Yeah.
Because some of the older panels are the FLA.
It's that they're a mix, yeah. That's one thing too that I'll point out is with the progression and the integration of the two companies, FLA and SFA, they've really progressed towards making sure everything pump related is service factor, both for surface and submersible. Some of the other products are labeled full load amps.
Sure, I've just put in both and kind of confused on some of them.
Yeah, no, definitely. This is service factor. That's how the overload works on this one. So yeah, just 2 little dials on there, and right out of the box you have a high level cutout and a low level cutout because both ends are going to be protecting the motor. On these standard across the line overloads, you have to add something, some type of amperage relay, a CT of some sort. There's more work involved to actually trip a panel out front. Do we have any questions?
I do. Another question is why on the percentage where you can turn down your underload, why do you guys even have below 70 if you don't recommend running below 70? Why don't you just have an off and then 70?
So we use the same overload on surface motors, which will typically pull about 30–40% on no load currents.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, talking to you guys on the troubleshooting, they say never go below 70%, so it's like, why even?
So that's submersible, and obviously centrifugal can
A
be
little bit lower, yeah. That's it. So just at high level, nothing, you know, in terms of dropping into the features and stuff, just very, very high level in terms of what control systems, other things you can add into the panels to better protect the motors. I think everyone's very, very familiar with the sub monitor in the room. Yes? Any heads? Yes? No? So this was Franklin Electric's in-house engineered overload that they had where you could drop it into any panel. You know, you could drop it into one of these panels. You could drop it into one of these panels in place of the ESP and have fully adjustable 3-phase protection. Underload, overload, over voltage, under voltage, current trips, ground faults. all resettable with times. So what we've done here with this, if you guys aren't aware, pairing that Franklin system solution again for better protecting the motor is we've labeled a handful of these products that actually extend the motor warranty.
How long?
3 years
Another 3 years?
on 6 and 8 inch products. Pair it with the Franklin STS, which we have in the showroom down there. Now that turbine also has a 3-year, the pump turbine also has a 3-year warranty as well. So these control products, as I get further into, you know, from a very basic, this is what we're giving you, to more advanced, this is what you're gonna get now. We know that the defaults are good enough to extend that motor warranty. That's a huge, huge advantage when it comes to pairing everything that works together.
You said you re-engineered the sub-monitor?
I'll show you in a couple slides.
Okay.
You'll see it. So it brings me to this panel here, and the intelligent pump starter, or something completely out of the box, similar to the sub-monitor that Franklin Controls, aka Ceres Industrial, had engineered prior to our acquisition. The approach, the mentality with the intelligent pump starter was A, to compete with the sub-monitor, A, to compete with the Simcom 777, those advanced 3-phase motor protection devices, but to offer the customer a lot more control of that motor. Okay, so the 3-phase protection is one portion of properly protecting the motor, but when you factor in starts, stops, backspins, deadheads, all these other things that can take out your pump and motor, this IPS has it by default. You don't have to add anything else to it. So for my line shaft users, you know, built-in backspin timer, it's in the settings. They use the same platform for the soft start, so we engineer our own soft start as well. So we have soft starts out there. Even if you go grab a Siemens or an Allen Bradley soft start and you start adding in all these relays to fully protect the motor, these FCS products have these all built in. And they're built into the percentages of the FEA manual as well. Does anybody use this IPS in the room?
I think I've installed
One or two of them. Personally, in the 3 years that I've been there, I think they've progressed in terms of their built-in software tremendously. 5 years ago to what they are now, with once again, that full integration of a system solution by Franklin has really changed the overall defaults on these, protection, what exactly to do out of the box, okay?
It's just getting hard to learn
We got so many
all the new
boxes.
stuff coming out all the time. It's like.
I think you guys are gonna enjoy the new sub monitor that's coming. Has anybody seen it in the room? The new sub monitor, version 2. One real important thing with this IPS and the level of motor protection you can give you is it can spit out a time and date stamp log, which is very, very critical to figuring out what's wrong with the motor, what's wrong with the pump system, what's wrong with the incoming voltage. Sub-monitor, I think, does that as well, but it's on runtime. I think with the Simcom product, you have to add something to it, little front panel.
So have you found that adding all this extra motor protection here, that it really has prolonged the life of these motors so much?
I would think
for
so.
years, it used to be across the line, your standard overloads, and you know, I'm not saying that they didn't need some upgrading to be a little bit more fine-tuned. But is there that big of a substantial difference in regards to all this electronically engineered stuff to protect the motor, to trip out on all these little faults, when the old standby stuff worked for many, many years too without these service call issues?
I think the progression of technology has extremely helped where the protection needs to go. The older stuff was limited to what it could do. I think we could heaters, all that fun stuff. If you were coming and better yet, if everything was sized properly and protected with an overload, you're not, you know, with sufficient water, if all of these characteristics played into a perfect pumping solution, then yes, a basic panel will work just fine. But how many times is that the case? Dropping levels, crappy power, hopefully no manufacturing problems on motors, but you know, it's things like that that I think as conditions have evolved, we kind of have to take a different stance in making sure that the investment is justified. So going over to soft starts now, we're looking at differences with and across the line. So who has used soft starts? Good, good, good. Does everyone know the difference between what a soft start and a variable frequency drive, VFD? Why the two starts completely different? And this, you can almost tie this into part wind starts, why delta starts. All it's doing is reducing the inrush, but it's still hitting with a 60 Hertz cycle. Okay. The drives, when I get to the end portion of it, do a little bit differently. But current limiting devices, back to electronic stuff, they have to be protected as well. Okay, so with these soft starts that FCS has manufactured, the whole mentality back to what exactly are we starting again? They've been geared towards pump and motor starts. You know, higher torques out of the box, the default settings are there to make sure that submersible motor is up and running in 2 seconds. Automatic voltage detection again. So that streamline of installation, dropping in your 3-phase power, dropping in your 3-phase motor, giving it the pressure switch run, and hitting it auto, that's the intent of where these panels need to go. Yet still providing you with that extended warranty because we know the protection's there in that panel. So I'll jump this page here. Let's see here. So very similar protective features that the other overloads have, but like I mentioned, they're kind of been geared to start and stop pump and motors as opposed to just industrial grade motors. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Good pace, too fast, too slow, loud enough, quiet enough? All right.
Good.
So in the same breath, looking at this IPS panel again, they manufactured a soft start. And with the new sub monitor, it's also going to be in the same flavor with a soft start version of the sub monitor. The big thing with this IPS that the sub monitor, I believe the SimCom, and the other 3-phase protection panels usually monitor no load is with amperage. Does everyone agree with me with that? Amperage? These FCS products are looking at power. So even the SSP panel, where we looked at 70-30, that's just a strict 70% of amps, trip. The new sub monitor, the IPS panels are looking at underpower. And underpower, when you look at it specifically in a pump system, it offers a lot more adjustability in terms of specifically when you're going to have a no-load condition based on or compared to a flattened out curve for an amperage. Does everyone understand what power factor means on a motor? And as we load up that motor, the power factor typically will go up to what it needs to be running at. 0.8, 0.85, 9, however much effective, yes?
No, if you could expand on power factor, I would appreciate it. If you could, because we run into it all the time.
Yeah, I didn't put a slide in there.
Some power companies, require correction capacitors.
Yeah,